Is it right, actually, to try and take a positive view of global warming, or should we really be doing everything we can to pull it back?
Well, you've got to think right from the start. The main thing we have to do is to stop or slow down climate change. The big problem is that we've already put a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, so no matter what we do to stop it in the second half of the century, the first part of the century up to 2050 or thereabouts,
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So if it's going to happen, why don't we try and plan for it? You know, the scientists will tell you that by 2050, the temperature could have risen globally by 1 or 2 degrees. What does that mean? And my job was to translate that into a language that everybody understood. And by doing that, I said, the summer climate, if our mathematics are correct, the London summer climate by 2050 will be very similar to that of southern France of today.
Right.
And it's just trying to get the stuff across.
Which by definition means that southern France, as is today, in 50, will be a much, much hotter place.
Absolutely.
So you're thinking that people who normally holiday there, or indeed who live there, will come and spend their holidays here?
Yes, and certainly looking at the people in this country, we should be thinking about holidaying here rather than getting in a plane and a lot of carbon that we emit by going to do that we should stay in this country, and by 10, 15, 20 years' time, the climate will be such that we will enjoy it. But we will only stay here providing that the leisure centres and what have you give us a good deal.
And invest in the future, basically.
You've got to get your act together. You've got 10, 15, 20 years to get it together. Go and do it now.
Susanna, is there any merit in your eyes to what Bill is saying, which is we're in this position, yes, take action to try and stop climate change and stop global warming getting worse, but in the meantime, rather than just being defeatist, make the best of it?
I think absolutely we need to be adapting to what's happening as well. In the last heat wave, there were issues with some of, trains not running because the lines were buckling because it was too hot. I looked up a figure for what our rail network can cope with. It's at 27 degrees. Above that, it becomes dangerous. Our lines start to buckle. So these are things that we absolutely need to be looking at. We also need to stop flying. We need to stop airport expansion, which we are currently doing.
We kind of know all that. So, but what do you think about what Bill's saying?
OK, well, I mean, these are things that I agree with, but I think it's irresponsible. I think it's irresponsible to act like it's just going to be consistently warmer every year. It will be unpredictable. That's what scientists are saying.
Nobody has said it's going to be warmer every year. There will be up and down, as you well know. But all I'm saying is the trend will be there. And in 10 or 15 years' time, I would much prefer people to stay in this country. It's not just the tourism that's going to change. Agriculture will change as well.
But how can it be... Just a second, Zion. How can it be irresponsible? I mean, he's talking about something which, in the short term, whatever we do now, we can't control. If all airlines stopped flying today, and if we all stopped eating meat today, it's still going to get hot in 2050. That's what he's saying. So why is it irresponsible to try and make the best of it?
So, first of all, it's possible to reverse climate change. There's no consensus that it's too late. I really think that any discussion about climate crisis should be on that reversal. We're talking about, what kind of future are our children going to face? We're talking about mass displacement of people. There's 4 million people displaced in South Asia.
So you think he's wrong?
I think that actually the idea. No, of course it will be. It won't be warm, but it won't be a nice warm holiday.
I agree with you that the main theme of our whole thing should be that we stop and, if possible, reverse climate change. But you're quite right. We're not going to do that in the next 30 or 40 years. That will inevitably get warmer.
So you say adapt. I mean, there is an element, isn't there, I think, that environmentalists, in a genuine bid to kind of get everybody aware of the problems we're facing, as both of you are aware, and get everybody sort of motivated to do something about it. There is a danger, isn't there, that actually people think, well, I can't do anything about it, give up, and don't change their behaviours. So maybe by taking a more positive approach and saying we need to adapt our behaviour is a better way.
I think being positive about climate crisis is a form of denial at this point. If we were in a war, we would not be saying, hey, it's great, these things will come out of this. We would be tackling it. Instead of rationing food, we'd be rationing emissions. We're not even having that discussion about how to bring our emissions down.
But aren't we trying
It's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. If we're expanding airports, emissions are going up. This is not enough. We have to act now to bring down, we have to have a real plan in place that reflects what it says in the IPCC 1.5 warming report that came out last year. It says this is how we tackle emissions in all areas. His point about holidaymakers...
But even if we did... This is his point. Even if we did everything that you've just asked for, and we should, you're absolutely right, even if we did, it's still going to be hot and warm. So we might as well plan for that.
OK, and we should plan for it, and we should be adapting, but I don't think we're going to get an influx of holidaymakers. If these countries, other countries, become unbearably hot, we will get displacement, we will get climate refugees. We will have we'll have a great climate for them to come and want to move into. We don't know how we're going to deal with this.
And actually, if we're going to make ourselves a holiday destination, we're going to be contributing to the problem because everybody will be surging and flying here, won't they?
That is a possibility, yeah, that is a possibility, certainly. But all I'm trying to say is that the climate will change in this country in the next 20, 30 years. Let's plan for it.
Isn't part of the problem with climate change that it isn't just definitely hot? It could be freezing cold, it could be flooding,
weather.
It could be all sorts of things.
No, I'm saying that by the 20, 30 years' time, the weather will be probably more predictable than it is now. You'll be going to coming into a much more Mediterranean type of climate.
You see, what struck me about what he said, and to try and make a comparison, it's a little bit like, obviously, the Second World War was a horrible, terrible thing we all wish had never happened. But you will find people who lived through it and who fought through it, who will point to the positives, who will talk about the nation coming together, who will talk about the nation being actually weirdly, a healthier nation as we came out of the war because of rationing, food rationing. We were eating actually much more healthily. There were all sorts of social positives to come out of World War II. That's not to say that World War II was a good thing. It was a terrible thing. And that's kind of the analogy I'm trying to make, that what he's saying is global warming is a terrible threat. It's an awful thing. It should never have happened, but it has. We might as well do what we can to mitigate it as we have to go through the process before we pull it back again.
But I think we need to talk now about that mitigation. We need to talk about bringing those emissions down now. And anything that distracts from that. Okay. I know that.
Isn't the danger, though, that some people might think, oh, OK, I'll take the overview of this, which is essentially you're saying it's going to be hotter, and they'll think, well, there's a positivity then to having global warming, so let's not bother doing anything because the result is that it gets hotter. People think, great, keep climate change going, keep global warming going, and we'll get better weather as a consequence. Rather than thinking this needs to be tackled.
The problem is if we don't actually solve the problem of stopping or reversing, if we possibly can, then that'll just be a transient way through. It'll get hotter and hotter and hotter. And by the year 2100, our climate won't be like southern France.
I suppose what Charlotte's saying that by entering any positive element at all, there's a risk that people will see the good stuff and forget the message.
That is true. There is a risk. But I'm really trying to say to the hoteliers and to the leisure people, you have a chance, but you've got to plan it.
Can I just ask you a technical question, Bill? I mean, the reason that the weather's nice in the south of France and Spain is because of our old friend high pressure, basically. You get high pressure from the Azores in the summer months, and that's why it's warm and sunny and dry. Here we get a lot of low pressures coming in from the Atlantic. Now, we know that global warming is going to make the temperatures rise. Why will it bring high pressure to the UK? Because if it doesn't, we'll still be wet. It'll just be warm and wet. It'll be tropical.
Well, that is one thing, yes. No, you'll find the jet stream will start moving a bit further north.
So it'll suck high pressure up from the Mediterranean, up over the UK.
There's every chance it will. I mean, in our job, it's probabilities and possibilities, of course, rather than definite things. But there is that chance. But yes, certainly you will get some nasty weather. You'll get some heavier thunderstorms. You'll probably get more tornadoes.
Like they do in France now.
But
you'll also have a lot of coastal regions underwater. I don't think people will be holidaying on those beaches.
Well, there'll still be beaches. They may not be in the same place, but there'll still be beaches.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Listen, Laura, you're a legendary weatherman. We have our legendary Laura here in the studio. You're going to have a weather forecast for the day in a moment. But what are your thoughts before that, Laura, on what the discussion is here, what Bill and Susanna are saying?
Well, I feel the same, that it's really irresponsible to say that climate change will be positive for the UK, because as Charlotte said, the reality is that people then may be less inclined to tackle climate change, thinking that, yes, we're going to get hotter summers. And I think the other thing that Bill said is that the weather will become more predictable. In fact, it will be the complete opposite. It will be much harder to predict the weather, because a big report's just come out to say that, yes, the UK is warming, but it is also getting wetter. The summers are getting wetter, the winters are getting wetter. And by 2050, this could be the reality for climate change in the UK. temperatures that we saw just a few weeks ago that were record-breaking would become normal. That would mean that we could see record-breaking temperatures, more droughts, but when the rain comes onto hard ground, we would see widespread flooding. So the scenes of Whaley Bridge, that would become more frequent. So we would struggle with infrastructure, we would struggle with the health service, we'd like to see more tropical diseases, and because of higher cost, people perhaps less likely to want to come here because the UK wouldn't be able to cope. Winters also would be milder, frost-free and wetter, which would be bad for agriculture, bad for farmers and bad for crops, which means that prices here would also rise. I think the big thing is, if people don't want to tackle climate change now, these kind of temperatures that could be reality in 10 or 20 years, we could actually push it off to 100 years' time or even make these temperatures not happen. So we shouldn't be thinking that climate change is a good thing for the UK. In my opinion, it actually is bad and we should tackle it and hope that these don't become the reality because we don't want more frequent, more severe weather.
And Laura, and do you mean that those sort of temperatures will be in the summer with freezing cold winters, or would just be permanently at those sort of temperatures?
We would have high record-breaking temperatures in the summers, not every summer, but in the winter we wouldn't be having the frost, we wouldn't be having snow, it'd be much milder, we see much more storms, more frequent coastal flooding. So everything that's more extreme would in 2050 become normal.